Okay, welcome back. So this video is going to be a little bit different. We're not going to introduce any new ways of manipulating the DOM, but we're going to take what we've learned and do a little bit of a code along. So we're going to play with Google's homepage. So I recommend that you open up Google, you either do this together with me or you do this on your own after you watch the video. And we're going to just do some fun things like change the logo. We'll do a picture of a kitten this time just to be fair to all those cat lovers. We'll change all the links so that they go to bing.com or something like that. The one point that I do want to emphasize in this lesson is that we can use a loop to manipulate multiple elements. So we don't always have to select one thing and change its color or select one image and change its source. We can select all the images and then loop through that list and for each one change its source. So I'm going to show you how we do that here. So we'll start simple. Let's start by selecting this logo. And a quick side note, if you are on Google on a day where they have a Google Doodle instead of this regular logo, it might not be an image here. Sometimes they have fancy animations or interactive games, and in that case, they might be something like a canvas element. So if you do encounter that when you inspect, that's all right. You can just watch this part. We've already seen how to change image sources, but I just want to show that you can do it on anybody's website. So select it. It's an image, and it has an ID, so that makes it easy. HP logo. So let's select that. Let's call it var logo equals document.querySelector HP logo. And of course, we could have used get element by ID as well. So we end up with logo equal to that. So we've now selected that. And if we want to change the image, we want to change the source, we need to use set attribute. And I have just the image here. Nice kitten. So I'm going to take this kitten URL, copy that, and I'm going to update the source of this logo. To do that, I do logo.set attribute. Inside of here, we're going to just write source, and then the second argument is the new source. And I hit enter, and I get my nice little cat up here. You might get a message like this depending on the image you use. So I'll briefly explain what this is. It's just mentioning that we are on a page loaded with HTTPS. You can see that up here. And the image that I set the source to be is HTTP. And to make it short, HTTPS is more secure than HTTP. So it's complaining that it should be all HTTPS. We shouldn't be using something less secure. That's a really simple version, but it still lets us do it. It's not a huge problem for what we're just trying to do here, just playing around with Google. It is something, though, that you would want to consider if you're doing something like this in your own application, and it would be a problem then. So back to the content here. If I wanted to change the width and height of this cat so that it takes up the same amount of space that the original Google logo did, I can see actually that the height was 92 originally, and the width was 272. And so that's what's happening here. We can see if I want to change this, I can do something like this. Logo.style.width, and it takes a string, and let's change that to be 500 pixels. You can see it stretches out. And I can do the same thing, change it to be 1,000 pixels, get a nice stretched kitty, and we can change the the height, and let's make that 500. Our poor cat is just getting stretched all over the place. So let's go ahead and reset the height to something a little bit more appropriate. Let's go for the height to be about 100 pixels, and the width to be about 200. All right, so that will work for us for now. Just for some more practice, let's also give it a border around that image. So logo.style.border equals, and we will do a 2-pixel solid purple border. And there's our wonderful border around that image. Okay, so now let's move on to what I introduced at the beginning of the video, which is selecting a bunch of elements at once and using a loop to manipulate them rather than having to do it individually. So what we're going to do is select all of the anchor tags on the page. There's a lot of links on this page. We're going to take each one and change the href attribute to go to some other website rather than wherever they go. So to start, we need to select all the anchor tags. So we have a bunch of ways of doing that. I'm going to call it links, var links, and we will do document. We could do query selector all, but I'm going to do get elements by tag name, anchor tag. And if we look at links, you can see we get quite a few on this page. So we're going to loop through this. We can't just do links.set attribute. That doesn't exist. It tells us links.set attribute is not a function, and that's because set attribute only exists on individual elements, and links is this collection of nodes. So I need to loop through it, just like I would loop through any other array-like object. So I can't use for each because it's not a real array, so I need to use a for loop, or technically I could use a while loop. Most people would use a for loop. So for var I equals 0, I is less than links.length, and we'll add 1. And then inside the loop, we're going to access each individual link, links I, and let's start by just printing out its text content. So links I.text content, and we'll console.log that. So this is a common pattern, looping through a bunch of elements and doing something. Maybe not printing it out in the console, but displaying it somehow, or changing something about it, changing its color. We hit enter, and you can see this is the text content of all of the links on the page. So we get things like photos and translate, Google+, Drive, Play, YouTube. All those links are somewhere on this page, which makes sense, seeing that it's Google's homepage. So rather than just print things out, I'm going to hit the up arrow and go back to this loop. And let's actually start by changing the style so that we can see the links easier. Let's make them a different color, and let's make them have a border around them. So I'm going to get rid of my console.log, and I'm going to do linksi.style, and we'll change the background to start, and let's make that a pink. And if we hit enter, you can see, I'll close the console, all the links on the page are now pink, or have a background that's pink. So this thing right here is a link. All of these navbar items and the sign in button is also a link. So let's do one more thing. Let's loop through again, hit the up arrow, and let's do a few things. So let's do style.border equals 1 pixel, and let's do dashed purple. And on the next line, links I dot style, and let's change the color to be orange. So those two, hit enter. You can see we get these really beautiful links on our page. Pink background, tiny purple border, not just a regular border, it's dashed, very fancy, and we get some orange text in there as well. But if we click them, you can see that the hrefs haven't yet changed, and that makes sense because we haven't changed them. So I want to change them all to go to www.bing.com. I need to go to the console, and I already have my links selected, this huge collection, and I already have that loop written, so I'm going to reuse it. And just to reiterate, this is something that we'll do a lot. So get comfortable, if you can, writing these for loops where we can't use a for each, so we have to use a for loop. We do this all the time. And from here on out, until we get to jQuery, we're going to be writing this type of line a lot. So we're going to links I, and we're going to start by just printing out where every link goes. So console.log, and we're going to console.log get attribute of href. Just like that. And we don't technically need to indent that, but just so it's easier for you to see. Oh, and we're missing our console.log closing parenthesis here. And now we get a list of all the links. And it's interesting, you can see that some of them, this one is linked to this thing, JavaScript void 0 or to null. So some of them are just empty, they don't have an href. Some of them go to separate websites, or some of them are relative paths like this here. And some of them are absolute, like this one right here. Okay, so let's change them now. Console.log links_i.set attribute, and we don't need to console.log it. Set attribute, and let's change them to be, well, we still want href. We want to change href to be www, let's do http://www.bing.com, just like that. And we hit enter. Doesn't look like anything changed. If we type links and we just look at what we have, every single one now goes to bing.com. And we could also inspect one, and we can see in the element inspector, it goes to bing.com. And the last thing we can do to test it is to click one. So let's click the sign in button, or let's click Gmail, and you can see it opens up Bing for me. So to sum up, we selected a bunch of things, a collection of links, and then we loop through that collection with a for loop. And then inside that for loop, we can do something to each individual element, which will then be repeated to all of them. So I changed the background color, the border, the font color, we changed the href, and we only had to write a few lines, and it was applied to, 20 or 30 different links on this page. So that's a pattern that we're going to use a lot in the next few videos.